constantly surprised myself with my capacity for bullshit in my life, so I think the best way to keep that from happening again is to just be vigilant. Never put anything past myself. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't so bad. Like, oh, that's the thing I was gonna say. Everyone knew, like, what was going on. So my ex came back from his trip, and I told him that I'd slept with someone from class, and he understandably had a really strong reaction, but he tried to make me feel like I'd betrayed him, and I did feel sorry for him, but I held my ground, because he tried to make me feel really bad, like really ashamed. And so, you know, like, I know it must have been hard to hear, but he was very quick to couch it in terms of, like, you cheated on me, and I was like, no, like, this sucks, like, I understand that this sucks, but I just want you to have all the information. I thought it was, like, the respectful thing to do, to be like, I am serious, I'm moving forward in these ways. And then he was quick to dial back and be like, you're wholesome, very affectionate things. He told me he liked my vocabulary, and he said that I had a sweet smile, and that he liked my ears. I don't know, just like beginning of talking, like flirtatious stuff. And yeah, we were like still getting to know each other, still discovering was posting to be like, look how much love I have to give. Not that like I even wanted a relationship with Finn at that point, but just like, aren't I sweet? You know, something like that. I don't know, I think we all, to some extent, I mean, maybe you didn't, and that's really impressive if you didn't, but I feel like we all, to some extent, needed to learn this past decade to, not use social media to try so much to control, to influence how people see us. And yeah, I'm more and more at a point, I post less and less, and I'm more and more at a point where when I post, it's because there's something I want to share, not because I'm trying to assert something necessarily. I've actually gotten pretty shy on social media, and I think sometimes we get to that point by way of just getting so sick of our own shit. You know, you have to like learn the hard way with filters and agonizing over captions and like caring how you're perceived, how it lands for people, which you can never really know. So you're just having a conversation with yourself in front of everyone. So yeah, but I think I was balancing feeling like a bad partner and feeling insecure as a newly single person. So I was trying to assert that I would always be there for my ex, that I was not going to give him less love just because we were parting ways. And I think it was like a defense mechanism. Like, was good at it. Like, I thought it was attractive. I was like, I wish that were me. None of it was like skeezy. It was all very sweet. But he was out there, you know, he was in the field. And he was in the field. And I think I was like, okay, I need to not put all my eggs in this basket like right away when I'm still in the process of dismantling my most recent relationship. So yeah, so after a few weeks of like thinking and watching and kind of letting things play out and like letting him reach out if he wanted to, because like the last time or two that one of us, the last time or two that we discussed seeing each other, I felt like I'd been pushing for it. So I was like, okay, let it lie. And he seems to have a lot going on. I have a lot going on. Not nearly as like sexy an array of things. It's more like crying a lot with my ex, you know, separately and together. Like, we were at that point when we would just like cry together, and moving and figuring out the logistics of sharing a dog together. Oh, what a mess, what a mess. And I started working for someone. I needed a job. Classes were expensive, and I wasn't going to be living with my ex anymore, and I was going to be paying much more to live by myself. So I got a job working as an assistant first, in a kind of like medical assistance capacity for someone who had recurring remitting MS. I think that's the name as opposed to not terminal, chronic MS. She was gonna have a hysterectomy and needed someone with some level of like caregiving experience, but wanted someone who would also function as her personal assistant, home organizer, in-home cook, all that sort of stuff. So it seemed like nice part-time work, nice flexible work while I was going through this very strange, turbulent time in my life. So I put my focus on that, and I just kind of concluded that Finn wasn't interested in me. It was a one-time thing, and after that there was like a shift in my behavior. I made an effort to stop like watching him as much, because it really was turning into an obsession. And like I said in the last few videos, I didn't fully understand where that was coming from. I just figured that I was in a really vulnerable place and looking for something to hold on to. And you know, I really did not want to do the rebound thing. I concluded that it was kind of a good thing, because I knew in the wiser parts of myself that I needed time. I needed to heal and really establish a new dynamic with my ex if we were gonna be in each other's lives, and that was gonna take tremendous effort and restraint and processing and thoughtfulness. And I was wondering if I was just falling for actually a little is an understatement. It gets very intense looking at my notes and like how slow going this has been so far as I'm like kind of getting back into the swing of it. And I'm also like, I'm not there's some stuff in this part that I'm like really dreading talking about, and I think it's bringing the overall mood down. This is the tough one. So I think I'd like to break it up and have the last one be, I mean, I'm not saying it's gonna be like happier, but be whatever it is. Okay, I also just realized that my microphone has been on the wrong setting all this time. I'm devastated, but all the more reason to have a fourth part. But yeah, oh my goodness, this series is so tough. It's a real challenge, but it's very expansive. I'm glad I'm doing it. It's very expansive. I'm glad I'm doing it. But it really brings home for me sometimes how hard it is sometimes. How hard some things are to put into words. Some big life experiences we process on a completely emotional, pretty much non-verbal level. Like obviously the experiences are verbal, the things that people say to us and we say to them and so on and so forth. But like how we process it, the terms we put it into, like how we translate it and how we talk about it to ourselves. I mean, I feel like I'm a pretty communicative person and pretty emotionally confrontational, and still there are things that I stumble upon when I'm trying to go through all these events. Just really tricky patches. wait and see if there's a reason to go more into that, because I don't want to fall into the trap of talking about my ex instead of Finn. But we did have a lot that we were both processing about our respective, last relationship. There were some interesting parallels, some very interesting ones, just like the parallels in our family structures. We both played similar roles in our last relationships. And our exes had things in common in terms of like being musicians and certain struggles that impacted the relationship. I don't know, similar mental health stuff, and there were similar breaches of intimacy, and similar roles that everyone would play in the dynamic. Like my ex and Finn's ex had parallels in terms of their roles, and Finn and I had parallels in terms of ours. So we definitely could like talk to each other about these things. But then there is the issue of like the attraction between us. So it was a very fraught space. I mean, it was like a very, well, not fraught, just like loaded, a very loaded space to be processing, because there was this additional like meaning to any time we were talking about what we were looking for in a relationship. It's very normal, when you're talking and like hooking up with someone. I mean, not that we had more than once, but like having a flirtation with someone, and you are processing your last relationship. We both had a lot to process, a lot of hurt and confusion and guilt. We both were very guilt prone and kind of felt like we were emotionally responsible for our exes, and we both felt like we were emotionally responsible for our exes. Sorry, some of this syntax is very wacky. We don't have the same ex, and we both clearly needed to talk about it and process it, and both seemed to not have the kind of support we needed in our separate lives. And I liked him so much as a person that like I kind of did want to be there for him as a friend. Like I just really liked him, and felt sad at the prospect of him being sad. He had some very like lonely feelings about him, even though he clearly was so liked and had people in his life and lived with his best friends, with some old good friends. There was just something that felt kind of lonely about him, and I really related to that, and I like wanted to really be there for him as a friend. But there was this issue of like sexual interest between us, like reciprocally, so it was really it was hard. We both had some vested interest in how things would shake out, with our exes, for each of us with our exes. So, so those conversations were, very loaded, and I do think that although we were processing our breakups in tandem, has some bearing. So it just felt like it came up almost like strategically, or like I said, anytime either of us got freaked out, it'd be like, but your ex, but your ex, but my ex, oh, but my ex, no, but my ex. Okay, well, so he said that he just didn't think he was cut out for it. That was really honest. Like, I wish I had, like, heard that, because I latched on to, like, oh, he's not over his ex. Oh, and yeah, he started saying things about, like, not being, that I was gonna realize that he wasn't whoever I thought he was, and I was out of his league, like, all these things that I thought he was just saying to, like, break it easy to me, because, like, that was not at all true in my mind. I thought he was, like, I thought he was out of my league. But there was something there that was, like, really, anxious and, like, real. Like, it just felt like a door opened and I could see through, and there was all this stuff there, but I don't know why. I'm really good at talking myself out of things. So I just heard, I guess I didn't believe him, and, like, you know, there's a lot of bullshit out there, so it's probably good to take what people whom you don't really know, to take what they say with a grain of salt. But I wish I had, like, believed him and been vulnerable back, and just been like, no, I really like you, and I really am done with this relationship, and, you know, it's no pressure, but I just like hanging out with you, or something like that. I think I just countered, you know, I think I heard rejection, and it might have been more of a question, do you know what I mean? But I was just like, oh, he's not over his ex, and he doesn't want to do this, and I'm, like, very much of the, he's just not that into you. Like, I was raised on that rhetoric. And I know that the movie is like, just kidding, he is into you, like Jennifer Goodwin, but I just heard him saying, this freaks me out, and, you know, I'm not completely over my last relationship, and I don't understand what's going on with yours. And I just heard someone who, like, was trying to break it to me, because, like, if you really wanted to make it happen, it's so bogus, it's such stupid, like, anything that tries to, like, strip human experience of its nuance, just, like, be wary of, because, like, since our one-on-one, our relationship as it was really began, yeah, I had really accepted. I had worked really hard to get to a place of acceptance, and I'd managed to do that without just reverting back into, falling back into my relationship. Don't be too excited for me. Just you wait. There's some bullshit coming. But yeah, for a few months, I was really committed to converting, transforming my dynamic with my ex, building a home for myself in my new apartment, focusing on this new job, focusing on cultivating friendships with other people from this class and this practice group, all those things. And like I said, Finn and I were back to avoiding each other and seeing. It just, like, it got pretty awkward when we really let it go. Yeah, it just got pretty awkward. There was just tension once again. We were back to tension. Like, if something that happened to me with a guy came up, because again, these people were all my friends, so I would tell them something and then they might like bring it up later in the group, and it was just a recipe for mess. Or like, he came in one day with a band-aid on his neck that was like, I mean, nice effort, I appreciate it, very considerate, but it was like so obviously hiding a hickey, and someone else in the group was like, that's clearly a hickey, my dude. And just like each of us being kind of like miffed, like, but not looking at it. I don't need to get into it, you get it, you know what it's like. Emotional damage. So we just limped along like that for a few months, and I think my anxiety started to go away, and I think I started to be myself more. I was kind of paralyzed by anxiety leading into us sleeping together, and then definitely once we already had. So I wasn't opening up in the group as much. I was so freaked out all the time, and I started outgrowing that, especially as my confidence was growing, as I was building a life outside a relationship that had kept me kind of small, in which I'd been sheltered, and I was really feeling like I was finding myself again for the first time since I was 16 or 17. I growing up, I had a pretty strong sense of self, and I lost myself starting when I was like 17 or 18. I got pretty lost, and then I got into this really serious relationship with an older person, and thought that I was healing in that relationship, but only upon exiting it did I realize that I still had such a path ahead of me, such a long path of self-rediscovery, and also like discovering yourself as an adult. You are a different person, getting back to who I am at my core, maybe from my childhood, but also growing into the person, growing into the adult version of myself I'd never known yet. my god. And I was laughing, but Finn was like, he was like smiling, like he was enjoying it. And then I was like, I think I gotta go home at one point. I had a really nice time, but the feelings, you know, they were with this man, like, narrating what I thought was like a hallucination, like this, foregone romance. I was like, oh, I think I should go, and Finn was like, oh, me too, and I called an Uber, or Lyft, or whatever, and I got in. Gone were the days of like fumbling with my keys and circling back. I got in the ride and left, and I got a text from him that was like, I'm kicking myself because I just froze, but I really wanted to kiss you. not out of like gaslighting, like he never tried to take back anything that had already happened. What I thought I was imagining was like the reality that it could go somewhere. Not the reality. The belief that it could go somewhere. I really did at times start to think like we like really like each other. Maybe someday when we've had enough time, like if we take it responsive to any time it just felt like we were having fun together. Suddenly, like, there he was, and he was back in it. I think he was just scared. And anytime we were really comfortable around each other, suddenly this ease came back. I just remember sitting on a trampoline with a whole group of people, but just like looking at each other. Oh, this is so weird. It sounds like I'm in like grade school, looking at this adult man from across this giant trampoline. push each other away, scare each other off. So dysfunctional. And the more that happened, the more we both felt the need to be defensive in these ways. Games. Yes. You could just say we were both. Actually, no, I thought that I was corroborating, like I thought I was saying that in my notes, but I say the opposite. to see it to some extent. So I agreed to go on a date with this person, so I went on the date. And yeah, it was nice. It was fine. He took me to dinner, and like, he had great ideas for places to go. He again was a nice dresser and very well mannered, and you every day since we met. And he tried to kind of dismiss it, but I held my ground, which made him kind of double down, and he looked me squarely in the eyes and said, "Remy, I haven't thought about you every day," which I knew was meant to wound me or throw me off. But I didn't need him to have had the exact same cognitive experience as I had. I knew that in terms of the big picture, he might be bluffing, because I felt confident that he certainly thought about me every day now, at this point, this day in September, this night in September. Now, meaning at the time I wrote my notes, I had the same anxious thought of like, that's not clear. Now, meaning at the time, so I just said, that's okay. Just like I did like earlier when he was like, I'm still in love with my ex, and I was like, great. That's fine. It wasn't like a lack of self-esteem. I just it's not that I actually was okay with that. It's that after so much back and forth, I thought I was learning to read him and trust my own intuition over what he was willing to say. And I didn't necessarily